Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Early Access. I'm excited to be joined by Grace Hua, the first BizOps hire at Cogent. Cogent is building autonomous cyber defense to help the world's largest organizations resolve their risks faster. Earlier this year, Cogent announced a $42 million Series A led by Bain Capital Ventures with continued participation from Greylock Partners and Definition. Grace joined as the 15th employee and helps lead initiatives ranging from hiring to growth and marketing. Prior to Cogent, Grace was a PM at scale and started her career at McKinsey. Grace, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I always like to start with how we got where we are today. So looking back at your path from McKinsey to Scale to HBS and now Cogent, how were you thinking about each of those decisions at the time? And was there ever a through line that guided you through those transitions?
Yeah, oh my gosh. You started with a hard question. My journey actually, I think, was very interesting. I think that a lot of things around why I made the decisions that I didn't become clear to me until later down the road when I had time to maybe introspect and reflect on those things a little bit more. But my through line in life has just been follow good people. Even when I was at McKinsey when I first started, it was join the teams that I thought I really related to the engagement managers and I really liked the partners. And then from there, actually, the main reason I joined Scale was, Scale's a great company, but I loved the BizOps manager that I had interviewed with. And I was like, this is somebody that I know I'm going to learn so much from. And I want to go and join your team and be a part of working with you. And then from there to joining Cogent, I actually interviewed with over 60 startups before I chose Cogent as the place where I ultimately wanted to land. And again, at the end of the day, it just came down to the people. That I think has been not such a divergence. The bigger realization actually though that I made with my life was I think despite my follow good people, I was doing things and I think that I was in a lot of motion in my career, but I didn't necessarily have a clear direction of where I actually was going and wanted to end up. And so I think that actually was a big unlock and lever point for me before I joined Cogent, of actually taking the time to go and reflect on why do I do the things that I do? And ultimately more long-term, taking this next step, what does that actually unlock for me rather than just at any given point following the next best thing? And in many ways, bit of a hard realization for me. I have spent a lot of my life feeling like I'm just on the treadmill. I have no idea how I got on this treadmill, but all I know is that I should be taking the next step forward to go do the next best thing that people are telling me that I should go be doing. But what's the intention behind all of that, right? Am I on this treadmill because I'm training for the marathon because that's a life goal of mine, or why am I here? And I think I didn't really have that clarity of what do I actually want my life to look like and what am I doing this for? And so for me, joining Cogent, that was a big, I think, turning point in my own introspection journey of what is it that I actually want to get out of life long term? I know that I love people and I know that following good people has always at least been a part of why I do the things that I do. But I think I came to a point where I'm like, the next thing that I do, I think McKinsey and Scale were incredible learning experiences. But I knew that the next thing I joined, I wanted to really make this a long-term opportunity that I was going to be able to stay here, build out a company truly from scratch at the 0 to 1, and have had hopefully the experience of building a generational company that 5-10 years from now I look back on and it was like, wow, remember those times when I was able to do X. And I think the longer term actually life goal for me is at some point I would love to actually translate some of these learnings and open maybe my own life coaching or career coaching practice. But I think first we need to go and gather the experiences in order to actually go and do that, right? And so for me, this time around, really optimizing for where is somewhere that I think I'm going to be able to join that gives me the opportunity to build that long-term, pivotal, career-defining moment, right? And I think in order for me to find that opportunity, it came down to partly the people. I needed to believe that I could stay and work for and, partner with my co-founders long term. And two, I believe that this startup had a real right to win. And I think a really important space that was going to be defensible and around and important in 5-10 years. So that is a very long-winded answer of how I thought about my career to date. And at this point in my life, why I specifically made the decision to join Cogent.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super thoughtful. And I think especially in the tech industry where there's so much going on all the time and you're in an industry with a lot of really driven people, it is easy to just go to whatever feels like the next best thing, like you were saying. Taking the time to really introspect and think about that, I think is super valuable and very inspiring. You mentioned meeting with over 60 companies, which is a crazy number. And so tell me a bit more about that process. How did you come up with that list? And what did all of those conversations look like to get you to your ultimate decision?
Yeah, I think when you're optimizing for people, it's very hard to know until you actually just hop on a conversation with them and understand, is this actually somebody who I think I vibe with, that I share a similar value system with? And so I was very open-minded. I was at Harvard Business School for the last 2 years. So after graduating from business school, I was kind of like, okay, what do I want to do next with my life? I had briefly at some point considered going down a founder path that ultimately I actually stepped away from because I didn't feel like I was necessarily doing it for the right reasons. But I knew that I was still intrigued by the earliest stage of building. And so I reached out to all of these VCs that I had talked to during my time pursuing a founder path. And it was like, hey, VCs, no longer founding, but I would love to join something early stage. What are the portcos that you're really excited about? Like, I would love to talk to them. And if they're looking for like generalist biz hire, send me their way. And so I was very open-minded, and I talked to basically every single intro that a VC was kind enough to make for me. And I think throughout the process, I got a better idea of kind of like what it is that I'm actually looking for, what maybe doesn't quite fit the bill. There are some founders out there who you know that no matter what, they're going to do what it takes to win. And I really respect and admire their ruthlessness, their ambition. At the same time, though, I was very much also optimizing for people who I felt like had also the emotional softness to feel like I could have really meaningful conversations, that they wanted to invest in my growth. And so I also wanted to optimize for founders who were a little bit more of the touchy-feely kind of personality. And so I ultimately chose Cogent because I felt like they were founders who at once were like, hey, we have this vision, we have this right to win, and we're going to do whatever it takes to go and get there. And I believed in their ability to go lead the charge on the team. But also I felt like they kind of had that softness where I could feel like I could talk to them about anything, like even about my personal life, really bring my full self to work. And that was an aspect that I was really looking for that is hard to know whether you're going to be able to find or not until you actually get into conversations with people and be like, how do we mesh, right? Like, are you somebody who I feel like is really going to not only invest in my development, but also like create the space for me to come to you and be my full self?
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think a really good call out because it is easy to just focus on how killer is the company and the team, but having the EQ and maybe like a more well-rounded approach is really valuable as well. And it sounds like you were pretty clear on wanting the early stages and something in the BizOps realm. But I know a lot of people, when they're considering different opportunities, are kind of balancing stage of company, role, industry. How did you think about those? Were you passionate about cyber, for example, prior to, or like what did that look like?
I didn't care about cyber. Sorry. It's not that I didn't care about it. I didn't know anything about it. And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, wow, this is a really important space. I can't believe that more people aren't already in this space, especially given how I think AI is changing a lot of the environment. I feel like these days I open up my phone or my laptop every day and there's like something new that's going on, right? Like Vercel gets hacked, like Mercor gets hacked. AI has made a lot of the offensive side of cyber a lot easier, and the defensive side hasn't responded in the same way. So it's definitely a very important problem to solve, and I'm glad that I can actually go work on something that's more mission driven. I think in terms of how people think about things, like there are so many different dimensions that you can try and goal on. There is one dimension that is, what does your role actually look like, right? And there's kind of more externally facing roles that are a little bit more like, hey, how do you go and like make a customer successful, right? How do you go and take the value of what this company is building and actually like give that value to an external customer or third party of some sort? And so I think those roles are a little bit more like deployment strategists, like agent PMs, even I think more traditional product managers. They're all kind of motivated around this. How do I go and actually make this bridge between company and customer? And then I think the other archetype of roles are a little bit more internally facing. It's a little bit more like, how do I go and build the bones of the company and everything else that needs to happen beyond just what does my customer need from me, right? And so I think that these are a little bit more of kind of like chief of staff, like biz ops type of roles where your job is to make the entire company hum effectively. And that could be like making cross-functional operations stood up and getting certain teams who haven't worked together before to start working together. Or it could be, hey, this function doesn't exist at all, but we need to go build it out. For me, I've spent a lot of time building out our recruiting function and being our founding recruiter because hiring engineers is the number one unlock to building the product that you ultimately deliver to customers, right? There's so many things that go into company building, and I wanted to have like the experience of having the breadth of everything that goes into like making a company successful. So that's one dimension that I have thought about. And then I think the other dimension is probably around like stage, because your day to day is going to look pretty different depending on whether you're at a late stage or like an early stage, right? And so like the difference here is like early stage, nothing exists. And if you don't do it, literally there will be nothing and you are building systems completely from scratch. Later stage companies, I think it's an interesting, different kind of a challenge where there is probably a fundamental baseline already of how certain things have been done, and you're coming in and maybe trying to establish like a slightly new modified way of working, but on maybe an existing baseline, right? And so it's like a little bit of, I think, a different challenge when it's like true 0 to 1 versus more questions of scale that happen with just larger headcount and company size.
That's super helpful. And like you're saying, just totally depends on what people are hoping to get out of the experience, but it's always good to be clear on how you think about the prioritization. So now that we've kind of established how you chose Cogent, excited to dive into what the last 9 question mark months have been like.
9.
Yeah, to start, it'd be great to get your elevator pitch for what Cogent is.
Yeah. Cogent, highest level, is trying to build autonomous systems to protect the world's largest organizations from cyber threats. We live in a world where AI has changed a lot in the cybersecurity space. Attackers are more effective than ever before, and the defensive side can't keep up in the same way. And so how do we go in and basically bridge the gap between the offensive side and what they're capable of and the defensive side and what they can do? And what's scary these days is that there's just so many threats that are coming in all the time. By the time usually that like you discover that, you know, you've been breached and that something is in your system, it's usually too late to respond. So Cogent is basically focusing on how do you go and autonomously help companies do the preventative work of securing your organization, responding to threats when you might have discovered that there could be something in your environment that is susceptible to attack, and going and really fixing the vulnerability all the way from end to end. So that's kind of high level, like what we're really trying to do.
Diving into kind of your first few months at the company, what do you remember most about your first couple weeks at Cogent?
Oh my gosh. I think I distinctly remember 2 things. The first one is, what do you mean I get to just decide things? You know, like being at scale. When I joined, we were a Series E, so maybe like 500-600 people already. And I felt like I got a lot of autonomy to go and kind of solve a problem the way I wanted to. But it's completely on a different level when you join a seed stage startup as employee number 15, because literally like I just devise something in my head and then like, I can just go make it happen. Everything from, you know, I was tasked basically with, please help us spin up our recruiting engine. And part of that is also help us stand up a talent marketing strategy of how we just get Cogent more in front of people in the ecosystem, because we're a seed stage company and nobody knows about us. And so I was like, okay, like here are some initiatives that I have, right? And I was like, initiative number 1, I think that we should go and throw an event hosted by Greylock with like, you know, XYZ other companies. And I was like, okay, cool. Like you go make the calls, you go make the connections, you go figure out like what venue we want to go and actually be hosting something like this with, and go make it happen. Or hey, like we want to go and start an internal program to like foster our employees who want to go and actually become founders. Can you just go and figure out what this entails? So I'm like, okay, cool. So I get to go set up all the programming, go figure out who our guest speakers should be, go get feedback from people, all the way to like, hey, like we want to go and invest in new swag to like help candidates be excited when they come into Cogent and like maybe have like an interview on site. Can you go think of like some interesting swag ideas? So it's like, okay, cool. So I'm like spending like 2 hours of my day like looking into like Cogent branded pickleball paddles and like thinking of like cool, interesting swag ideas. So I think that there's this sense of like you get to go and define and own every single thing. You just get the broad level mandate of like, hey, please go do X. Like, please go help establish Cogent's brand better. Like, okay, and then you go figure out exactly what that means, and then down to the nitty gritty of how you want to go and like bring that to life. It's a lot more execution focused than I think I've ever been in my life before, but I think that that's also been really fun. The second, I think, big reflection that I had, I was surprised by Cogent's culture a little bit, because we actually started our founding engineering team with a lot of like staff, senior engineers. And so like I knew that we were coming in and there were like so many customers that we're trying to support, but nobody felt stressed. And I was like, that's crazy, because I feel like most places that I've been before, there's always been a little bit of like a chaotic feel to like the things that we're doing. And I was like, everybody is working so hard, but everyone seems so like cool, calm, and collected in a way that was very new to me coming from scale. So that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's super impressive. Have you discovered what enables them to do that? I mean, it sounds like also they're just more experienced, so it phases them less, but like, yeah, what is the secret sauce there? Because I could really use that.
Oh my gosh. I think part of it is experience. Like, I mean, I asked some of our engineers this the first day. I'm like, why is everybody so calm? And they're like, honestly, we've just seen it all before. Like, a lot of them were some like pretty senior engineers at Coinbase, and there were a lot of fires, I think, at Coinbase that they had to fight and go put out. So I think like having seen excellence, it's not your first time around the ringer. You kind of know how to like handle these things a little bit better. And then I really think that a lot of it comes from the top down. And we have founders who I think generally are very cool, calm, collected, even if maybe like behind the scenes, who knows like what's happening, but they never let that show to the employees. And so I think the culture thing also makes a really big difference in terms of how people themselves internalize and experience stress.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of looking back at those first few months, what's something you think you got right that really allowed you to establish the foundation for everything that you've done since?
Yeah, so my first BizOps manager at scale, David Kinsella, amazing human being. The first thing that he told me when I got there, he was like, the best thing that you can ever do in your career is build trust with people. Build relationships, go and build trust, go and just like try to help people in any way, shape, or form. Can. And I've really taken that to heart. And so coming here to Cogent too, I think the first, week I was here, I was like, let me make sure that I grab coffee with every single person on the team and every single person who has joined since then to really like get to know them and start building a rapport. But also I think making them feel like their opinions really matter, right? I feel like just giving people almost like a listening ear and place to be like, hey, I want to hear about your experiences, like things that maybe you would want to see being different at this company. And like, I want to kind of take that to heart and see if there's a way that I can go and do anything about it. I feel like building trust and understanding where people are coming from is always going to pay dividends like later on in your career.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And on the flip side, is there anything you spent time on in those first few months that now looking back, you're like, okay, I could have spent less time there?
Yeah, I think I don't say no quickly enough when it comes to things that the things that I know need to be a certain way, or like there's a certain bar there, but I'm like, let me just give chances. And at a startup, unfortunately, I don't think that you actually have that much time and luxury of giving chances. So for me, this mostly came out because I was doing a lot of intro calls for engineers that I was talking to. And I think that at the beginning, for like the first 3 months, I was like, I will just, be lenient with it. Like, I have maybe some level and idea of like what good looks like, but I want to just calibrate myself. Like maybe I'll just take the call even if I don't know. And I think pretty consistently I came to this realization that the people that I had a gut feeling about that were like not going to meet the bar never met the bar. And so I think I ended up spending a lot of time that I probably shouldn't have spent because there were so many other things that needed to get done on these things when like I should have just said no to begin with. Like your time is so valuable. Like make sure that you are being decisive about things and don't let like feeling bad about something be the reason why you actually like go and spend a bunch of your time, because that's a precious resource that you're not going to be able to get back.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there's probably no normal week per se, but like what did last week look like for you, just to get a sense of everything that your role spans?
Yeah, there's not really a normal week, but I can walk you through what my last week has looked like. Basically, like I probably always spend some portion of my week doing like main Career to One initiative that I have been responsible for before hiring a founding X to like go and do that thing, right? So for me, I've been spending a lot of time on hiring. So there's probably 40% of my week that I dedicate still towards like doing recruiting related things, whether that's intro calls or like strategizing how to close candidates, to like how do you go and actually analyze our funnel and like what do we need to go be differently, to like how do we go and like introduce new interview processes, create rubrics, train up other interviewers, like make revamps on how we think like is our process effective or not. So that's kind of, I would say, like a 0 to 1 like function initiative that I spend time on and always spend some level of time on no matter what. And then everything else on top of that is probably some level of like strategic project that comes up and like comes in my way. So this last week, one thing that dropped onto my plate was, hey, like Anthropic announced Mythos, like their new like model that has crazy cybersecurity capabilities, and everyone in the industry is freaking out, right? For us, we're like, this is our moment. Like for the first time, companies are really taking this seriously of like, holy shit, attacks are now so supercharged. We are not prepared on the defensive side for what a world after Mythos is going to look like once this model and open source models get their hands on the same capabilities. So Cogent, I feel like, is very well positioned to go and handle that downstream issue. We're like, yes, exactly. Like, this is the problem. We've been telling you that this is the problem. So now go do something about it, right? So they think that there's this new sense of like urgency that's been created that we really want to like be able to capitalize on. So my work stream has basically been, hey, Grace, like, can you go and develop like a Mythos response strategy? And that's everything from like coordinating across functions, marketing, sales, product marketing, growth, our CEO to kind of like be like, here are all of the things that we need to do, right? Like first, like what are like the like content that we want to go and publish in order to establish ourselves as a thought leader on like, what does Mythos actually mean? Two, like growth side, like what are like the reactivation campaigns that we should do with maybe customers we've talked to before but didn't quite have the urgency? How do we go and like, you know, enable our investors to go and like re-ping people in their network to be like, hey, like now is like a really important time where you should go be doing things. And then three, like just creating assets and collateral and like sales enablement work basically to make sure that this is actually getting out in the field. Like this is our specific way that we want to talk about what we can do in response to Mythos, all the way to four, like working with product to be like, Mythos is here. We've already done a lot of things that I think innately address it, but are there specific products that we should go be doing like a quick 1 week sprint on that is going to be very on the nose, be like, this is exactly what we can do to address Mythos. So it's been kind of like very cross-functional, just like this like Mythos task force. Like what do we do to really capitalize on this moment? And because it's very cross-functional, I think that naturally ends up falling into the land of BizOps because you need to get a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And then when people don't have capacity to do things, you just kind of end up like being the one who does it. So like in my last week, I've like written a PRD, I've like worked on our first meeting deck, I've like created a bunch of marketing collateral. Like it's a very interesting time. I think BizOps really gives you kind of the visibility to touch a lot of different functions and act as their roles when there are strategic projects like this and they don't have the capacity.
That's super cool. And that's definitely a very timely example and also shows like the value of having a BizOps hire so that you can capitalize on these opportunities that come up. I feel like so much of a lot of today's like Appland is about timing and capitalizing on these kind of more macro-ish events. So that's a really cool project to work on.
Yeah.
And then I know we've touched on hiring here and there, so would love to spend a bit more time there since you're basically, like you said, the founding recruiter. So when you meet someone, what have you found to be the most effective interview questions that's high signal and gives you most information on whether or not they would crush it at Cogent?
I usually like to ask them two things. And then later down the road, I actually like to drill into something different. But my screening questions are usually one, like, what is the thing that you have built that you are the proudest of? That gives you a good indication of kind of people's like motivations in life, and what they say is like what they're proud of. I think is also really interesting as a meta point. And then the other thing that I like to ask them is like, what do you do in your free time outside of work? I think that at Cogent, we're really looking for people who are self-starters, who are always trying to learn and be on top of things. And I feel like it says something if you're somebody who works already a pretty intense job, but in your free time, you're genuinely really passionate about certain things. Maybe it's like your dance community, maybe I don't know, just trying out like novel AI tools, but whatever it is, it's always really interesting to hear about what people spend their own personal life doing, as well as how they view success as defined like by themselves. And then that gives you a generally good sense of their motivations and whether that's the kinds of motivations that we would really look for at Cogent. And then downstream, my old manager actually did this to me, so I've been trying to also implement it in my interviews. It's very meta. It's literally just tell me your life story. And you hear from people in the way that they talk about things, and you drill into certain aspects. They tell you they did something, and you're like, why? Like, why did you make that decision, right? Like, what were you thinking? What was motivating you? It's a very, like, don't just tell me about something, like, show me why you got to the places that you are in life. And then even the way that they talk about their life story, I think is also really interesting signal, even around How self-aware are they? What's the kind of introspection level that they have? So those are kind of my general, how I like to conduct interviews.
Yeah, I love those. Let's say you like them and you give them an offer. Market is so competitive these days. What has worked for you guys in terms of closing candidates and really pitching them to choose Cogent?
I think about this question a lot. At the end of the day, I think that like people go to a company for probably three main reasons. One, they're like, is this somewhere that I'm really going to learn? Am I going to like push myself to be the best version of myself here? Two, am I going to enjoy my day to day? So that's more like, how do I feel about the people that I work with? This is somewhere that I have fun, right? Like enjoy my life. And then three is, does this set me up well for long-term opportunities? So whether that be, what does this set me up to do next? Or is this going to give me a financial outcome that I'm looking for? I think those are kind of the three things that people are usually optimizing for. And we like to turn no stone unturned on each one of these dimensions. And the thing with closing is that it starts like at the very beginning of the process. It's not just, hey, I've given a candidate an offer, and so now I'm going to start closing them. You should really be closing from the first time you ever go and meet that candidate, right? And so making sure that you're reinforcing those key messages of why Cogent is the place that is going to be the best fit for all of these three dimensions, right? This is the place where you're going to learn the most, where you're going to like have the best, like, you know, like experience, and where like you're going to set yourself up the best for your future. At every single point and touch point along the interview process, I think is really important. And so it could be more informal touch points with candidates while they're in the interviews stages with you, and just be like, hey, we're doing like a team dinner tonight. Come hang out, right? Come get to know some people on the team, get that like hype, and be like, yeah, I really see myself being here, working with the team day to day. So I think like the thing with closing is that like you're closing literally at every single step until you actually are giving the offer. And hopefully all of those things at the end of the day end up paying off, and the candidate is like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Cogent is definitely the place that I want to be.
Yeah, those are really good tips. And I think the framework of the three main buckets that people ultimately care about is really spot on too. So love that. And then for the BizOps role in particular, since obviously you have a ton of experience with that, if a CEO was hiring for their founding BizOps hire, what would you recommend they look for?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have a couple of things that I think are really important. One, I think you really need somebody who has a can-do attitude. It's important for people to feel like there is nothing that's beneath them to do, because a lot of the founding BizOps job is very execution heavy and maybe not as like, you know, quote unquote traditionally sexy that you might be thinking of. Like for me, I was like, okay, I want to go and host our Series A party, because I think it's a really big moment for us to like make a splash in the ecosystem. How do I make this party good? Like I'm literally on the phone with the caterer, and I was like, I want people to have fun swag that they can walk away with. And so I like bought these like little candy boxes, and they like had like Cogent sticker over them, and it was kind of like, you know, Sugar Fina, like it's kind of nice like looking like candy box, and I was like, oh, this is like a great like little gift. I thought that they would compact for me. They did not. And so I spent like 1 hour of my day just like stuffing plastic boxes with like different types of candy, and I'm like, think that I was going to be spending my time doing this, you know? But this is what it takes. Like all of these things in conjunction are what it takes to go and make a company successful from the ground up. And so I think it's important to have somebody who's excited and bought in to like, be going on that journey. The second thing that's really important is having like a bias towards action. I think a lot of people get stuck in like their head, like thinking about the most optimal thing to do. And the thing is, like at this stage, you never know. Like you're never gonna have a optimal decision. And so I think the best thing that you can do is just experiment with something, get findings, and then like move on and like go either try something else or try the same thing, right? It's like experiment, learn, iterate, and then like go run something else. To do that, you should just go and do things, right? Like that is going to be more effective than you trying to figure out the best thing, and then you don't even know if that actually is the best thing when you actually go forward with it. So bias to go do things is really important. 3, maybe a little bit similar to bias for action, but being able to make decisions when there is very little data involved. And that's not necessarily you being the one to make a decision, but also your ability to push other people to get to decisions. Because again, like at this stage, like there is very little that you know. There are no structures, there's no right way to do things. And so the best thing that you can do is just like figure out how you can still come to a consensus regardless, even if it's not the most optimal decision, and just be like, okay, like we gotta move forward with something. And then I think the last thing that I would say, and like maybe this sounds a little bit trivial, but they need to be really good at making friends. And I say this in a couple of ways. One, I think making friends is ultimately how you get information to help some of the decision making upfront, right? Nobody knows what's going on like early stages. And so one of the best things you can do is just talk to other people, right? Like go make friends with people who work at other like seed, Series A, Series B startups, maybe later stage even, and be like, hey, like I would love to learn from you. Like what have you experienced? Like what wisdom can you pass on to me? Or like hey, I'm thinking through like what is the right way to do like compensation, like for these new offers that I'm giving. Like market is moving at crazy rates, Carta data is outdated. I got to go make friends with like the person who like, does talent at so-and-so company and just be like, hey, like we gave a candidate this offer at this amount. Like, does that track for you, right? So I think there's so much around people connections that are underrated. And then, of course, internally, right? Like BizOps, a lot of the time actually ends up being a bit of a culture carrier for early stage companies. And so being able to, I think, like make friends internally, get buy-in, like do cross-functional collaboration, all of that is really important too.
Yeah, I love all of that. Great tips. And on the note of talking with other people and kind of trading learnings, I've been talking with different friends who are doing BizOps or chief of staff type stuff about how they use AI in their jobs. And so I'm curious if there are any projects or skills you've set up that has helped you.
Yeah, we try to do a lot of AI building at Cogent. I would say that it's probably pretty specific for certain workflows that we have. The one thing that I'm in the process of setting up is just having Claude literally be my hub of everything that I might need to do. So like integrate my Granola, which takes all of my meeting notes, integrate my Slack, so it's constantly reading my messages, integrating my email. And through that, kind of that being the centralized source of truth of every single action that needs to get carried out, and also tracking like what's gotten done, what hasn't gotten done. And then from there, like you can also just have it directly create documents for you. So I think just generally using Claude as the main connector of all of your different things and then have it just go do different things on your behalf has been probably one big way that I've meta scale tried to go and use AI to improve my workflows. And then I think more specific ways that are probably a little bit more oriented towards individual work stream. One is, for example, every single week we need to go and build an all hands deck. And there are certain people who are responsible for filling out different sections. And so previously, our VP of engineering or something would like, go into Figma, like copy, like duplicate deck, like change the dates, copy the link, send it to all of these different people who need to go and do things. Like, let me just have Claude do this, right? Like, let me go give instructions to Claude every single Thursday, 10 a.m. It triggers this run of like, it'll go into my browser, it'll make this new version of Figma, and it'll send it to all of the right people that need to go and fill things out. And so there's, I think, just a lot of manual optimizations that you can make of like, if you see yourself having recurring workflows, you can go and do all of those things. And then the last thing is, so our go-to-market team has already built this, and I think what's interesting is you can actually take a lot of learnings and apply it on like the recruiting side of the world too. But the go-to-market side has basically built a Slack bot that you can talk to do any sort of Salesforce updates that you might need on the sales side. And I want to basically like Control C, Control V all of this, but into recruiting because everything lives in the candidate tracking system, like an Ashby or a Greenhouse or whatever. And I spend so much time literally just going into Ashby and making really manual edits, like change this candidate to the next stage or like, email this candidate about this one thing. And so like, I would love to just have also Slack basically then be your central source of taking actions rather than needing to go into all of these different systems that you might like need to subsequently use as well.
Yeah, that's super helpful. A bunch of great ideas there. Next, transitioning to kind of the last section, which is our rapid fire.
Okay, sounds good.
First question, what is the first thing you do when you start your workday?
One is drink hot water. My Asian mother would be very happy to hear this. And then two, I think it's take stock of what is the number one most important thing that I could be getting done today. My day ends up filling up and there's like 50 different things that I end up tracking, but what is the one thing that needs to get done today that is going to have the most critical impact? And just like having that be like a guiding force to start my day, I think is at least like good.
Yeah, that's a good one. And what is the favorite AI tool you use that's not Cogent?
I already talked about it, but Granola. Like, I love being able to be present in meetings and not have to worry about like, oh, I need to go and capture everything.
Yeah, I'm also a granola fan. What is your favorite coffee shop or park in SF?
I love Neighbor Bakehouse. I am obsessed with the different bread varietals that they have. They have this like miso sourdough that I think is so good. And they also have this like Galbi Gym croissant.
Yes, I know that one.
Love their flavors. And then Dogpatch is usually always really sunny. So it's nice to like sit outside and then like just chat with a friend, like see the passerbys go by. So I'm a big fan of Neighbor.
That's awesome. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
Oh, okay. So I actually thought long and hard about this. I wasn't going to come back into tech actually after business school. I was like, I want to go and do my own place-based entertainment business. You're probably like, what the hell is that? What are you talking about? Like, think escape room meets arcade meets amusement park. I really believe in like person connection and like ways to create shared experiences and memories together. And I would love to create some sort of a concept that brings people together in like a very fun way. So like escape rooms I think are too much effort, but think like if you had a complex with like 50 mini games and each mini game was like a physical game, right? Maybe it's like let me throw some balls into like moving holes. Maybe it's a mental like logic puzzle. Maybe it's like floor is lava, swing across 3 ropes to go and get to the other side. Bite-sized mini games that people can play in person and like, try to beat the challenge. I think that would be so fun.
Yeah.
If ever one day I retire, I will probably also look into doing something like that.
That's awesome. I feel like that would be such a hit in SF. So
I know. I think so.
I hope someone makes it happen. Well, I look forward to your post-retirement plans so that I can enjoy that.
Yeah, I look forward to it too.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for the time and all the insights.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode of Early Access, and thanks so much, Grace, for sharing all her wisdom and insights. Stay tuned for the next episode.